I got to my leaving drinks about 6 p.m. and by that point it had been seen by 80,000 people around the world and it had over 600 comments.
What? One of the things I'm most excited about season 14 is that we've got some exciting sponsors coming on board, and it's been a really long time in the making. So without further ado, a word from this season podcast sponsors. Let's face it, we all know the importance of a good, balanced nutrition diet, but the truth is it can get really challenging to get all the nutrients you need every single day when you're running a very busy lifestyle or even running your own business. And if you're anything like me, you probably don't want to resort to a multivitamin pill that is filled with chemicals, binders, and artificial ingredients. This is why I'm so glad that I found Vivo Life's Thrive. It's a revolutionary health supplement that has all the power of a multivitamin, but that is made with 100% plant-based and natural ingredients that you can actually pronounce and actually recognize. Things like kale, turmeric, baobab, or even spinach. It's been backed by over 50 independent studies and was actually formulated by a nutritionist. That's why each scoop holds the antioxidant equivalent of 10 servings of fruit and vegetables, along with 15 essential minerals and vitamins, including B12, vitamin D, and zinc. The truth is you just never know what your day is going to be like. That's why I just make it really easy and simple for myself. I add a scoop in either some water, my shakes, or my tea. It's delicious, it's nutritious, and it gets me focused for the rest of the day, and my energy levels have never been better. And here's the best part in it all. Vivo Life are so confident in the quality of the product that they've took over 5 years to design that if you're not satisfied after 30 days, they'll give you a full refund, no questions asked, and you can even keep the product. If you want to try Thrive for yourself, you can go over to www.vivolife.co.uk and use the promo code MARK to get 10% off your first order. Podcasting is one of the most effective ways to grow your business, build an audience, and give your brand a voice. But the idea of launching can frankly feel a little daunting. What kind of gear or software should you use? What if you don't like the sound of your own voice? How to get great guests to come on the show? And how do you get people to actually listen once you've published your podcast? Well, you could go and find out on your own through trial and error, and that might take you forever. Or you could save yourself a ton of time and a ton of money by grabbing a spot on my brand new online video course, How to Go From Naught to Launch, that you can take from the comfort of your own home. That's right, I've made the process of launching a successful podcast from scratch super easy. So if you're ready and you want to stop wasting time, head over to theunconventionalist.com, click on online courses, and grab yourself a seat and use the discount code PODCASTTRIBE to get 20% off the entire program. I can't wait to see you in there, but more importantly, I can't wait to listen to your podcast. Hi, and welcome back to The Unconventionalist. I'm your host, Mark Leruste, and this is the show about what it's really like to turn your message into a movement. Now, I've got a really exciting guest today. I'm really looking forward to getting into this juicy topic because it's a controversial topic. For some, they love it. For some, they hate it. But we're going to talk about LinkedIn. We're going to talk about what it means to be authentic online and how to find your voice. And I couldn't find a better guest than Alexandra Galviz to come and talk about this, who's been a voice of LinkedIn now for the last few years, created some local communities. We're going to talk about that and more. Welcome to the show, Alex.
Thanks for having me, Mark.
You're welcome. So it's already like an adventure to get here this morning.
It was.
Yeah. And we've got to be compassionate because you've lost your voice. You woke up this morning and you're like, I haven't got a voice, but you still showed up. So thank you.
That's all right.
I appreciate that. So how's your summer been so far?
Yeah, good. I am very much looking forward to my holiday at the end of the week.
Yeah.
So
I bet. And we were saying before we kicked off that we keep on crossing paths.
We do.
Yeah. So you were on Rebecca's podcast / YouTube series called The Leaders Vaccines.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, the first time we crossed paths without us really crossing paths was actually reading your book. When I was in the corporate world.
Yes. So how did you even come across my book?
I can't even remember. I think I mean, at that point, I was like researching anyone and everything
Yeah.
to kind of like get out of the job that I was in.
Sure.
So like coming here, I was like, this is a bit surreal.
Yeah. Was it helpful in some way?
Of course.
Yeah?
No, definitely. And
Okay.
I remember reading it, and it was one of those things that was like, just all makes sense when you read it.
Yeah.
But, you know, obviously there's so much you can read, and it's really until you get to the doing that things start to change.
100%. 100%. It was interesting. I was listening to some of the interviews that you've done in the past just to hear kind of your story and kind of how you became, because you're also known online as Authentic Alex. I mean, you said as a joke, kind of, some people just even introduce me as just like Authentic Alex instead of Alexandra Galviz. And another thing that we have in common as well is that you spent some time in France, and do you still speak French?
I do.
Okay,
yes,
there you go. Bonjour, bonjour. For all the French listeners out there. But so you were in the corporate world.
Yes, I was.
Right. How was that?
Oh dear. Where do I begin? No, I just, I come from very humble beginnings. And for me, I was very much sort of instilled with this, like, you'll go into finance or be a doctor or, study law. And, I did that. I went into finance, and I was really interested in pursuing a career in that. What I then realized maybe 2-3 years in, that what I was striving for, like money, power, and success, weren't the things that made you happy. And I think, in society, it's just a thing. Like, that's what you're sort of taught and told by friends, peers, family, society. And it was like a harsh reality. I had this goal: by the time I'm 30, I'm going to be in management, I'm going to work in Canary Wharf, I'm going to have all these nice designer clothes and travel internationally. And then when I got that at 24, it was like a rug was pulled underneath me. It was like, I've worked relentlessly since I was 18.
This was supposed to be the dream.
It was supposed to be the corporate dream. And then the whole dream came crashing down. So I had a mega quarter life crisis, like a cocktail of like stress, anxiety, depression, like you name it, everything at once.
As all self-respecting millennial, we should all have a quarter-life crisis.
I think it's healthy to have it then than having a midlife one, if I'm totally honest.
Now, what's interesting about what you say, I've said this before on the show, but there's a quote, and I'm going to butcher it, from Jimmy Carrey, who basically says, I wish everybody could be rich and famous so they'd realize that that's not the answer to happiness. And I feel like it's interesting, we have a very similar kind of path where I went in corporate, had this exuberant lifestyle, had a driver, had a chef, had someone working at home. We had 300 square meter flats with telescopic staircases, and anyway, and I was miserable. But often people who listen to like these kind of stories, like, oh, it's easy for you, like you got the lifestyle, and now it's easy for you to say, actually, that's not what makes me happy. So what you want to say to someone who's listening to this, go, yeah, okay, that's you, but when I get that glamorous lifestyle, that will be my happiness.
Yeah, so interestingly, the kind of post that catapulted me into the limelight on LinkedIn really covers that. At the end of my post, I wrote, sometimes it takes getting to where you want to be to realize it's not where you're meant to be. I do a lot of work with sort of graduates and students.
I love that sentence. Pretty cool.
To like avoid them, being in that situation, especially around the social mobility space, because there's a lot of pressures from family and themselves. And I am conscious that I can't change their mind. I can try to kind of show them the realities of the corporate world. And, I'm not saying all corporate jobs and things are the way that we've experienced them, but for me, that was the case. But for them, it's really hard because that's all they know, because that's all they're told and they hear. And it's just them. I'm conscious they have to experience it,
That's right. Sometimes you just got to go through it so you can get it. It's like even as a parent, right? So I'm a parent now, and you see it, that sometimes you want to control and mitigate every kind of incident and potential danger zone, but you sometimes just got to go, okay, if she doesn't learn that if she touches that, she might fall or whatever, then she might just never get it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I love what you said, is there's only so much you can read. It's only when you start doing that you get it. So you mentioned this pose because this is quite a pivotal, like, when you look at your kind of the hero's journey, right, of Alexandra Galviz, when you look at the hero's journey and the origin story, you had already been posting a little bit before that?
Yes, I had. So I'd been posting from July 2015.
Okay.
I'd been on LinkedIn since I was about 18
Yeah.
and kind of updating it as I went through like internships and graduated.
Like everyone does, kind of like it was your CV online.
Like a passive.
Yeah.
I was a passive user.
Yeah.
And then I saw someone write an article about internships.
Yeah.
And this was in the days that Pulse existed.
Okay.
And they had like a student editorial calendar to kind of encourage, younger generations to write. And I saw that and I thought, oh, I've just done 4 and like, I've got lots of experience of what I did right, what I didn't do right. I had quite unusual internship experiences as well. So I knew that there was something that I could share that would be of value. And I very much kind of, my goal at the time was like, I'm going to be the person I didn't have because I didn't have someone that was sort of relatable that could tell me how to navigate the world of work when you start, because it's such a massive jump going from education to work for the first time. And so I just started writing articles.
For all you students listening to this, you don't know how good you got it right now.
Exactly. The harsh truth. And so, I just started writing on there and blogging, maybe not even that often, like quite inconsistently, in fact, maybe once every 2-3 months. And then just gradually built an audience over sort of 2 years of students and graduates that were, reading my articles. And
what were you talking about?
So a lot around internships, that
how to get internships, or why internships are good, or how to look for the right internship,
or how to transition from education to work, the realities of that, how to make the most of the jobs that you're in, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, you're
like
basically acting as the guide of what you wish you had when you were going through that journey. If only you had that Alex who could tell you like all those tips, then
exactly.
Okay, cool. And to come up, sorry to interrupt, one of the questions I often get with people when they ask, but what if I run out of content to write? What if I run out of ideas of what I should be posting about? Were you thinking about all the questions you had? Like when you were going on your journey, and was that like a first step for you to kind of come up with like some ideas of what to write about?
Now that's more the case.
Yeah.
I think back then I had the structure. So LinkedIn used to have, and it still has, but they're old ones, they haven't renewed it, something called the LinkedIn Student Editorial Calendar.
Okay.
And they'd actually give you topics every month to write, so you were never stuck.
Oh, that's really cool. Like a content calendar.
Exactly, but for graduates and students. They've got old ones there, and I always advise students that I train, go and still use them, because if you're stuck for ideas, that helps, but they're not updated. Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, cool. So you started writing about this, and the thing I want to ask you is, are you still like filtering yourself a little bit from your voice? Like you kind of like, maybe you're not sharing your real opinion. Are you still trying to like,
Never.
keep it within the box, or were you already kind of?
Oh, as in that time.
Yeah. When you,
I know there, I was very much filtered still.
Yeah. So you kind of like this is professional. This is it's got to sound professional. Okay, cool. And then, what led you? Was it a video post? When you wrote the first video post,
No.
was it a written post?
It was a written post, and I hadn't done many written posts, like if any, and it came with a photo. And I think that's also what did it. So it was a photo of me staring down from One Canada Square onto London. Yeah. And it was a photo of me from behind someone had taken. Yeah. And you could see all of London and the Thames sort of going round. Okay. And basically the post said, when I was a little girl, I used to dream of working in the really tall building with a pointy top by the river. Yeah. But having got to the 45th floor of that place, I realized that my definition of success was wrong. It was based on money, power, and status. Yeah. And what we never tell people is that with that comes stress, anxiety, depression, to name a few. But sometimes it takes getting to where you want to be to realize it's not where you're meant to be.
Good start.
Yeah.
That's good copy. I love it. You can just like from the pin of the moment just drop it down. That's good copy. It's real. And it grabs your attention, right? Yeah. I can imagine so many people reading that going, oh, that's what I want. That's what I want.
That's either what I want or that's what I've done.
Yes, 100%. And so you write this post, right? It comes with a picture. How did you feel writing it? Like, I want to get through that experience. Like, tell us what's going through your head, what emotions are coming up. Because so many people listening to this are like Alex pre-posting that photo and article, right? A lot of people are like, I've got this thing I want to say, it's in me, but I'm just too scared. Like, walk us through that process.
Can I swear?
Of course you can.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like literally, that was what I was thinking. Like, I'm done. Like, I'm done, drawing in the lines. I'm done not sharing what I feel like I want to share. Like, I had all these things, all these opinions, all these, like things that were bursting to come out, ideas and whatnot. And I was just like, fuck it. Like, I'm just going to say what everyone else is thinking, you know, like, take off the rose tinted glasses. We do not work in the most ideal places. You know, especially the corporate world. And
were you employed then? Like when you wrote that post?
Yeah, it was my leaving day.
Okay. It's like one of those adverts. You win the lottery and you dress up as a bunny rabbit and you flick the middle finger at all your sponsors.
That was it. So and you know, it gets funnier. So I posted that at lunchtime, and the last day I was running a LinkedIn training. Okay. So my screen with my profile, and then it's just going bing, 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 and everyone's like, "What on earth is going on?"
Of course, because you up until then, you had never really had you seen that kind of interaction, engagement, and reaction from people on that level.
So yes, so my post wasn't unintentional, and it wasn't accidental. Okay. I had been tracking what was working. Okay. I'd been curious about what was going viral, how it was going viral, how the copy was written, what type of medium.
Like you engineered almost. Okay, got it.
Yeah, so my intention was to write that and was for it to go viral.
Wow.
Yeah.
What's the date? Do you remember the date?
It was the 27th of February, 2017, I believe.
Okay, cool. So it's your last day. You post this. You started doing this training. And were you surprised? I mean, I know you engineered it and I know that you were hoping for, but were you surprised by that level of engagement that you got?
For sure. Yeah. Because I'd never had that kind of engagement. Yeah. I got to my leaving drinks about 6 p.m. and by that point it had been seen by 80,000 people around the world and it had over 600 comments.
What?
And I was mad. And at the time,
and just it wasn't sponsored, you hadn't pushed the
No. So, you know, for me that was just like, what on earth has just happened? Yeah. Wow. Like, I mean, you know, of course, that's what I hoped for, but I know that was such a long shot. Sure. You know, you can never predict these things. To a certain 100%. Extent.
You can do what you can. You can think about it, but then it goes off and it takes a life of its own. Okay, so you get back on you leave your leaving drinks. It was like, good luck, Alex. Did you have something set up already, or
I mean, the question that I was always getting was like, are you going to a competitor? Because I worked in foreign exchange, so it's quite a niche industry, and everyone kind of hops between the same companies. Okay. And I was like, no. They were like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I don't know. And no one could like fathom the fact that I was just going into nothingness. Mm-hmm. You know. The thing that I was doing was taking a 6-week break. So I ended up going to India, Sri Lanka, and Nepal on my own backpacking. Okay. And everyone's like, oh, are you going to find yourself? And I was like, no, I did a lot of that work already. I'm just going on a long ass holiday to relax. Yeah. And for me, to a certain extent, I felt like I was almost like I wanted to peel off the crap that I'd accumulated like when I was in the corporate world.
I get that. And so did you manage to get back to every 600 comments, or was that just too overwhelming?
No, I think I ended up getting back to like back then I didn't have much to do.
And was there one comment in particular that stood out for you that you can remember, that you remember watching that maybe moved you, or it triggered something inside of you, or it grabbed your attention?
There were two. One was someone I didn't know, and it was a comment which was around, it's such a great thing that you've realized this at this age versus later in your life, that you've experienced this and that's the outcome. Yeah. And the other one was a personal message from my very first internship that I did. I worked in an insurance company, and I liaised a lot with, I had a particularly special experience in that place. Mm-hmm. And I liaised a lot with the directors of our main HQ in Spain. And I almost didn't go to university to work for them straight away because I had such a good experience. And in the end, I did go to university. And this director sent a message and said, we always knew that we lost our weight in gold when we let you go. Oh. And I was like, oh,
that's nice. That's nice to hear. Yeah. Yes, as opposed to like, old bosses being, vindictive or some way. So you go traveling, and here's what I find really interesting. Again, people listening to this, often when I do, workshops and talks and stuff, I often joke about, what's the social media platform you spend most time on? And we go through all the different platforms, and it's been really interesting over the last few years how I've seen the shift, from Facebook to Instagram, Snapchat, all this stuff. And often LinkedIn is named as like the least favorite social media platform, right? Like I remember one, and I don't know if you'll mind me naming, but I probably won't then. But I remember a mate of mine who I know, he said, let's just say that if the last platform was LinkedIn and I was on a desert island, I'd be crying every day if I had to use it. Like it was that kind of thing.
I wonder if he says that now.
Yeah. but yet you are a voice for LinkedIn. Like you believe in LinkedIn, you believe in the power and the transformative power of LinkedIn, and you believe that not only that, but you can be authentic, you can be real, and actually that's what the world needs more of. Someone listening to this who may be in a corporate job or might be running their own businesses and who still have this layer, right? Before they've had the fuck it kind of, pulling the trigger, they've got this layer and they're still looking at LinkedIn as like, I guess I have to be on LinkedIn because that's where every professional is. Like, what are the sort of things you usually tell to those people? Like, if you could have a room full of them, what would you want to tell them?
You tap into people's mind through their heart.
Mm.
And I realized this sentence came to me just like 2 weeks ago when I was talking to two. Interestingly, two of my clients decided to do content a little bit differently to what they usually do. Mm-hmm. And one ended up sharing quite a personal, well, actually both of them ended up sharing quite personal stories. One that was someone else's story, but they were involved in it. And the other one was their story, sort of around health. And interestingly, the levels of engagement that they got versus any of the content that they've done before was through the roof. Yeah. And both of them said, I had much more sort of people also message privately. And they said they enjoyed writing it more than the other sort of content. Yeah. And to me, that's what it's about. People connect with the heart, you know, and I don't know, we kind of take this sort of false pretense in the corporate world and we translate it onto the online space too. Yeah. And that doesn't matter what platform you're on. So you know, it's all kind of filtered, it's all perfect, it's all life is great. Show real. And that's not true. Yeah. That's so not true. And I'm finding that there's more and more content like that starting to be on LinkedIn where people are starting to show the realities and the ups and downs. True. You know, when I did that post, it was quite rare, but now it's kind of common thing that people kind of are sharing that. And I think that's a great thing because it starts to break this picture perfect image that we have of people's lives and careers and whatnot. Yeah, 100%. And, you know, one of my clients, Elaine Carnegie, who actually wrote a post on LinkedIn about her story where she had this, you know, kind of physical experience that she went through at work and how it was actually hard to get back. And she shared about it openly with a picture like of herself, and just it was a relatively short post, but it went crazy. Like it went crazy. I forgot how many 100,000 views she's had, all this kind of stuff. I remember going, she's like, "Oh my God, Mark, this is just pinning," and it was like, yeah, because you had the courage to talk about something that's real. And I find that, I don't know if you find this, but when you have the courage to talk about something that's real, often about your story, but in the service of others, people connect. You know? I think that last point you made is super important. It's not about you when you're sharing your story. Yeah. It's still about other people. Yeah. You know, content always has to go back to who you're trying to reach to a certain extent. You know, the client that I was mentioning, one of the two that I mentioned is the CEO of a big company. And she was saying the impact that it's had with the relationships of my staff is like also like she's in amazement. And I'm like, well, that's not surprising because if you're a leader and you're vulnerable and you're open, 100%. That changes the culture of the organization naturally because people see that you're approachable, that you're human, that you feel things like they do. And that starts to change so that there's so many different ripple effects of doing something like that. You know, and there's something happening. There's a shift in the space, 100%. You know, I do quite a bit of work in the workplace and with leaders and that kind of stuff. And you see that there's a shift happening in terms of being more open to, it's like vulnerability and, you know, and courage and, you know, and feelings and that kind of stuff. But why do you think still to this day, companies, and certain companies, not all, but operate with this belief that like, we pay you, you show up, and we need you to conform to this kind of identity or character or traits, and therefore people start believing that they need to be someone they're not? I just think it's our old hierarchical structures of the way the world of work has been for however many years. And I think that a lot of that shift of the way that we're doing things now is massively driven by the new generations coming into the workforce that are demanding for something different. Like it's not working for them. Yeah. And that's what's I believe is driving that change. Because what we had before, a very kind of traditional hierarchical, this is the way things are done, just do it, 100%. Go in, do your job, leave,
do what you're told,
and
don't question,
that generation is just like completely and I wouldn't say completely different. I take that back. I think that the generation that are probably in those sort of management positions at one point were that generation that were demanding similar things. I think it's just a difference in the relentless of that younger generation now.
Yeah, and it's shifting. Like they're saying by 2025, 75% of the workforce will be millennials. That's so like a lot of companies started going, we need to start shifting our culture differently to attract and engage the next talent. So when you went on your trip for 6 weeks, and then how did you transition from that to becoming, basically from understand your company and your full-time job is helping people become more themselves and more prolific and serve better on LinkedIn? Like how did you go from posting that to suddenly becoming a voice for it?
So I got back from my trip, and I think I got back around sort of April time. By May, it was around my birthday, and I was sort of twiddling my thumbs, applying for a few, like maybe 2 or 3 jobs. But it was in my heart, I knew I was like half-heartedly applying. I wanted to go into the third sector. But having head of L&D in my CV and applying for admin roles, like no one was looking at me. And I was fine with starting from scratch again, but it was just I was half-heartedly doing it. And then I kind of thought, do you know what? I don't have a mortgage. I don't have a partner. I don't have anything that's kind of like holding me back. If I'm ever going to do my own thing, it's now. And so I just thought, why not? And then people started asking me naturally, how do you do what you do on LinkedIn? And then I was
because you were still posting while this whole transition, you were still like, so how regular were you? Like how?
So I was traveling. So I maybe posted like once a week, like something about my travels
while you were traveling.
Okay. So I did a post about interviewing in the jungle in Sri Lanka. I was interviewing for Gallup as a French consultant.
Why don't I Gallup?
A research firm.
That's right. Yeah. Okay,
so I was interviewing for them, and I was sort of in the final stages, and they were like, we can hear like birds tweeting in the background, like exotic birds tweeting in the background. I was like, yeah, I'm kind of in the middle of the jungle. And then I came back to London, and was sort of trying to figure out what I was going to do next. You're gonna have to remind me of that question.
It's cool. We were talking about like how did you transition from going where you were traveling to suddenly becoming a LinkedIn, and you said you were traveling, you were still writing,
so I was still posting, came back and thought, okay, let's just give this a go. And then people started asking me, how do you do what you do? And then I just thought, okay, what are the 2 things that I love? And to a certain extent, so I always tell people, like, I didn't just kind of randomly leave and start. In my mind, I thought if I was ever going to do 2 things for like business wise, one would be working with students and graduates, developing them. And the other one would be spending like all my time on LinkedIn. Okay. Famous last words.
But were you, so just to understand, you weren't active on Twitter or Facebook or none of those, right? So you went all in on LinkedIn. It reminds me of Lewis Howes. I don't know if you know him, the host of the School of Greatness. A lot of people don't know this, but that's how he started off as a LinkedIn expert. That's what he did. Like his first niche, when he was starting to find his kind of new, thought leader kind of space, he was all about LinkedIn. And he was helping people basically how to get on LinkedIn, how to grow your network, your community, all that kind of stuff. And I feel like one of the things I want to distill here, that I hope people are listening to this, is that you weren't spreading thinly and posting on Facebook and Twitter and all this stuff okay, cool.
I wasn't anywhere. But
just
LinkedIn.
Got it.
And
the question, isn't it? You haven't had breakfast. It's been a hard morning. I mean, you're here. I get that. So we were just talking again about the transition from, you didn't go from scratch. You said you wanted to work with students. And you wanted to spend all your time on LinkedIn.
So one of the exercises I did.
So glad I'm paying attention, because I'm the one that's like, wait, what were we talking about? Like, that's great. I'm on my game now.
You're here with a dying woman. So I started doing some workshops on LinkedIn in my corporate job and started seeing the impact that was having. And then I ran an external workshop for people like from any sort of space and wanted to see again if that would have So I was almost kind of experimenting when I was
this
still
is when
in my
2018
job.
or
17
still 17.
So
okay,
I'm still in my job.
Okay.
And I'm experimenting with LinkedIn workshops. And then I asked, so my internship with this insurance company came through a social mobility charity that helps graduates and students get into the corporate world. And so I went back to them and said, could I run some workshops for your students? Because my job as head of L&D was running workshops and training and speaking. But that was a very different audience. You know, it's finance professionals, they're all older. This was a very younger audience and the topic was very different. You know, it was all around employability. And I ran them and I really enjoyed it. And I thought if I could make that my living,
well, how cool would that be?
I would be a happy woman.
Yeah.
So I kind of experimented before leaving and then kind of like when I left, I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. I've got to find a job.
I'm going to do like
do the
what
right
everyone
thing.
does, get a job, get it. Yeah.
Exactly. And then slowly, I kind of was like, it's time. Like, I've got to do it now. If I don't, then when am I going to do it? And so, interestingly, when I did those workshops, they were sort of asking me, I was in my leaving period, and they said, you know, what are you going to do next? And I said, well, I'm either going to do this for a living if I can make it work, or I'm going to go back into, you know, employment and probably try for the third sector. And they were like, okay, well, you know, keep us posted. And I basically went to sort of start my thing, and they rang me because I messaged them and said, you know, I've decided to go down the route of doing this for a living. Could you give me a recommendation on LinkedIn with regards to the workshops I ran? And they said, oh, funny enough, we were going to call you because we've actually got an event coming up and we'd love you to be the keynote speaker and we actually got budget to pay you. Cool. And I was like, wow, like for me, that was such a crazy experience for quite a few reasons. One, it was the first, like they got me my first job in the city, like my first internship. And they were now my first client. And then the other thing is that I'd done an NLP course quite a while back where I visualized speaking at exactly that event with those people that were paying me.
That's so cool.
And I thought this is all a bit crazy. But that kind of, you know, you kind of just need your first client to give you that impetus
that break.
to kind of keep going. And then slowly, you know, when I told people I was setting up my own business, my following was sort of kind of a potential client base, you know, because they'd gotten to know me. They were, you know, on that journey with me.
So you'd been building. I just want to distill a little bit of what you're saying, right, for people listening to this. So a couple of things that stands out for me. One of them is that you didn't quit your job and then go all in trying to figure it out. You had a job and you were experimenting with stuff on the side. So you had this idea of potentially running some workshops for LinkedIn for students. So you asked, you know, where you're working, other people. So you had that safety net of your job while experimenting so you could actually feel like what it was. So that's number one. Number two, you weren't afraid to contact, you know, your previous employers or your previous, you know, companies. You did contact them for referral, but there's a beautiful message there that's actually go back to the low-hanging fruit. What are the low-hanging fruit around your previous companies, you know, the people you know, like people who follow you. And the third thing is you'd been posting quite regularly now. You know, it wasn't like you went all in on LinkedIn today and you had been posting, you started to grow a little bit of a following, a little bit of a name, and then you had that really big break in that post that you had. And so all those things converged to that moment where, boom, now you're invited to go and speak for the first time on stage. You're going to become a paid public speaker. Yeah, cool. I don't want to say that because for a lot of people, they'll go, oh, but that's easy for you, got lucky. No, it's like all these things.
No, there were so many things like in the run up to that and so many parts that I needed to actually do for it to kind of get to that point.
Yeah, 100%.
And so, that was June 2017 that I got my first client. And then, I thought, okay, if I could teach people to do what I do or how I've built my own personal brand, then that would be great. So I started coaching and then coaching turned into training and then training turned into speaking at conferences.
Do you remember your first paid client as a coach, as a one-to-one coach for LinkedIn? Without needing to name them, but do you remember that?
I remember this conversation so well. She worked for the government.
Okay.
And she's a great friend of mine now. But she did the social integration and immigration policy for the government. She was a special advisor for them. And it came off the back of going to getting her was a weird experience as well. I went to a networking event and I met a PR company. They said, oh, really often we get clients for your type of work, but we're just a bit too high end and big client. to take those sort of smaller ones. So maybe we could pass you some of our leads. And I was like, yeah, that's great.
And did they want a commission out of it? Or
No,
they just literally just say, we've got this demand, we can't help them.
Exactly. And they put us in touch. And I remember going to this coffee and sitting down with her and having a chat. And she, asked her about what her journey was. And then she, was asking me a few questions. And then she sort of stopped the conversation and she said, do you mind me asking how old you are? And I remember my whole body freezing up in panic.
Inadequacy just hit.
Because I've always had a chip on my shoulder with my age, because I've always been ahead of my peers. So, I was in management by the time I was 24. I'm like a consultant by the time I'm 25, 26. So I was like, oh no, here we go again.
You just call me out.
And I was kind of in a hot flush. And I was like, oh, I think at the time I must have been 25. And she was like, oh my God, you're a baby.
Yeah.
And then like panic really started to set in. And she said, no, if I was ever going to do this work, it would be with someone your age.
Yeah.
And I was like, ooh. And then in my mind, that really shifted as like, my age actually in the work that I do is a massive benefit 100%. For both the graduate stuff that I do, but also the LinkedIn stuff that I do. And so I then sent a massive cookie to the PR firm in their branding colors saying thank you. Just to like, say that lovely. Was technically my first client.
And were you awkward around pricing? Because this is a topic that I think a lot of people don't talk enough about, especially when you start your own business. About how you started with your prices and stuff. Like, how did you come up with your first fee?
I wish people bloody talked about it because it was so hard. So what I did is I went to someone that was doing what I do, and I'd kind of started to form a relationship with him. And I turned around to him and I said, look, I'm interested in doing what you do. My audience will probably be slightly different because I was at the time I was starting to look for like millennials to help with their personal brands on LinkedIn. And then he was like, look, I charge, I think it was around £350 an hour. And he was like, you're kind of starting out and your audience will have a slightly different budget. So I would probably charge £100 an hour. So I kind of was like, cool, I'll charge 120 an hour.
And see.
And I had like 2-hour sessions. That was my initial program.
Your offer, right?
And that was it, and I kind of off I went. And
did you feel that? So how did you feel? Like again, I want to talk about the what were you going? Your emotions are going through. So you're talking to this woman, and at one point she's going to ask you like, so how does this work? Like, how much does this cost? Like, do you remember when you had to say, so we're going to do 2 hours, and it's going to be $240? Like, do you remember that? Yeah, no, I do. Like very distinctively because it's such an icky subject and. It was the first time of me having to ask for money for what I do, right? Yes.
And everything became very real all of a sudden that, money would be exchanging for something that I'm providing, value I'm providing. And when she was just like, yeah, that's no problem, I was like, that
your sweat's like
And interestingly, my pricing changed like not shortly after when I started to get more clients. And basically 2 of my clients turned around. One was the head of HR for a Swiss company. And the other one had just sold his business for an 8-figure sum. So I was planning to target millennials, but I basically started to get a lot of inbound from C-suite and entrepreneurs that had,
because they have vetted interest in building their profile on LinkedIn, and they've got the resources and funds to pay for it, and they want to get the results.
Exactly. And for me, that was never my plan.
But
I thought, why not? Let me see how it goes. And both of these people, I think at that time I'd increased my price to 150 an hour, and they just went, you're charging, can I just say you're great, but you're charging way too low. And especially if you're working with other people like us, then they wouldn't even consider you because you're charging too low.
And so I want to repeat what you're saying, because this has happened to me, it's happened to my partner, it's happened to so many people I know. Literally, for people who are aiming for C-suite executives, big corporates, they will not look at your proposal if it's not a certain amount, because a certain amount dictates a certain quality to them. So it's kind of like, if you're £100, we don't do cheap, and we don't want to hide cheap, because if you're on the lower scale of the spectrum of service providers, you're probably going to be on the lowest scale of service. And I remember started work when I started. I think one of my first few gigs in corporate, the budgets that they had right? I remember like one of my first talks ever was like 500 quid. And for me, that was like, oh my God, it was so much money. Like I charge 10 times that now for a talk, right? But back then I remember going, oh, this is huge. And then one company was saying exactly the same thing. They were like, oh, well, that what we're doing, our CEO would like you to coach him, but you can't charge that.
I've heard a lot of stories like that where they go back and they're like,
yeah,
we like you, but you need to change your
yeah,
pricing.
Is that crazy?
And that's a great thing, but sometimes people don't get that feedback. So a lot of
and this is for C-suite corporate. It's a different thing. I personally, from my experience, maybe yours is different. When I work with, small business owners, entrepreneurs, kind of emerging thought leaders, it's a different category of budget than when I go and work with the big financial corporates and banks and that kind of stuff. Just putting it out there in case someone's going to the next kind of entrepreneur, $5,000 for like a 2-hour program, and like, anyway. Yeah.
So, I mean, that's pricing is something that I've really kind of struggled with, and actually only recently I worked with a pricing coach.
Okay.
Who knew those existed?
Everything. You now have a coach for
exactly.
everything.
And that was such a brilliant experience because it kind of really kind of structured out what I do, and it was.
What did you learn from it? Like, if you had to distill some of the like.
If I had to distill it, it's not based on your time; it's based on the value.
The perceived value of what you can deliver.
Yeah. Versus, I'm going to give you 6 hours, and 1 hour is £200.
Forget it.
It's like it's. No. If I'm giving you just an example of someone that I've been working with, they changed jobs and they were on 80 grand and now they're on 160 grand, no tax, because they're moving abroad. And he was like, that's an example.
Thanks to like having built their profile, being more prolific.
That's a great example of basically the value that I've provided to a client. Like, what is a few grand gonna like be in comparison 100%. To like the 40 plus grand they've just increased their salary on? But then you don't think about it that way.
Well, it's interesting, because I mean, I work with an amazing client, right? And we went through that exact same conversation where this guy is just unbelievable. He's super smart, super kind, super knowledgeable, got a great reputation in his industry, and you were still charging like per hour. And I was like, mate, you need to get away as quickly as possible for per hour, because, Daniel Priestley taught me this about when he was chatting to me about, like, if you go to a restaurant and you order a spaghetti bolognese bowl or whatever you're into, it's all mixed and you get a price for that dish, right? But you would never think about, how much that tomato, that 1 inch of tomato that you put in that sauce and that little bit of celery, and that, you don't break it up, you package it, you just go, hey, here's the program. And it's like your clients, for example, if you're into health and fitness, you listen to this and you go, okay, what does your client want more than anything? They want their energy, their vitality back. They want to look good when they're naked. They want to play with their kids. They want to be able to perform at work, all this stuff. What is that worth to them?
Yeah.
Like, if you could get them to that in 6 months and they would never recognize who the person they've become, how much would that be worth to them? And if you charge anything less than 10 times, like, how do I make that? I'm crap at maths. Let's say you charge $2,000, but you're giving them 20 grand of value. That's a no-brainer, That's pretty cool. Cool. So now you feel more like, now you got it, you got your structure, and you're kind of like, that makes sense. And now you feel more confident in your prices when you kind of pitch your price to your clients?
Of course. No, much more confident. And I think that also comes with time and experience. Like a lot, when we talk a lot about pricing recently with like friends or people that work in my space, I go, I wouldn't be able to charge what I do now when I started.
Oh God, yes. Thank you for saying that. You need to
build up
100%
in your also, you're building out your product or your service. Like my program that was 2 back then is now like a 6-month, 12-month program. Like that also builds out. What you provide builds out. You as a person develops. I do a lot of things to develop myself. That's again going into all of that that you're providing. So
I get that.
That's that grows with what you're doing, basically.
So we're coming towards the end of the interview, and it's gone by so fast. I want to make sure we can get some practical tips for people listening. So someone who's like, either I'm not on LinkedIn, dare I say that, or I'm passive on LinkedIn, right? So I've got an account, I maybe even have a photo if that. But what would be some of the like real practical beginners tips that you could share with people about, okay, if you could sit with them and you could give them like 5 tips to get started, what would those 5 tips be?
I would say polish up your shop window.
Okay.
You know, like the first part of that people see on their screens, their banner, the photo, the headline, and the summary.
Okay.
Like they have to be tip top, because if they're not, people aren't even going to go to see the rest of it.
Got it.
So like
that's like the top tier.
The top tier of your profile.
Yeah, yeah.
So, you know, your banner, you can change it and easily with Canva. A professional photo if you can, but if not, like phones these days have great cameras.
What would you? So when you say the banner, that's the part of the top of the website.
Right,
People like listen, because I've got people listening like, what is she on?
A banner is like, I like to call it, it's basically your massive digital billboard.
Okay.
You know, that's,
yes, I like that example.
That's where you instantly show people visually either who you are, what you do, what you can offer, what interests you. You can play around with that.
Do you put text? Would you recommend people to put text in the banner, just a photo themselves?
I think one or the other or both is totally fine, but just be conscious that when you see it on your mobile, it will look very differently. So you can have like normal size text that you see on a mobile and it will look tiny.
Okay.
So, and also depending on what you have in the background, your photo will be starting to kind of grab part of the space as well. So if you've got anything important on your left hand side at the bottom, that's just going to disappear.
Okay, got it.
Because your profile photo gets covered by that.
Got it. And then profile photo, do you recommend to have something close up, far away? Like
I'm more of a close up and smile. Like, like the reason I use the idea around the shop window.
That's such a good point. It's like, I'm laughing because for me it's so obvious, but I can imagine that some
I've
people.
seen so many, like, I've seen someone recently, like this kind of like stern, pouty.
And they're not in security.
And it's like, why would I want to work with you? You almost look scary. And I say it's a shop window because I always use this analogy. If you're walking down a high street and you're looking to buy a pair of shoes, and you've got a nice shop window and it's got like some flowers in the window display, the shop assistant looks smiley and approachable and nice. And then you see another shop window that's kind of like crap, the paint's falling off, it has even nicer pair of shoes, and the shop assistant looks grumpy. Which one are you going to go into? And basically, that's your shop window. You know, if it looks polished, people are going to want to go in and know more.
Makes sense. And so we talked about the banner, we talked about the photo, then you said, so the name.
The headline.
So headline.
So that's the one sort of sentence.
Is that like the bio? It's not the bio. No, it's the sentence that you have underneath that would say, for example, public speaker, and then your workplace expert, whatever.
Exactly. But what tends to happen is it will automatically get your last headline title, as in your job title.
Got it.
And people never change that or know that you can change that.
So like if you're working in a company, that will be the first
head
line.
Head of
L&D at blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. But you can edit that.
You can edit that. So you can either do it where you have titles or you have a sentence.
Like helping C-suite executives build their brand on LinkedIn to better inspire their people, whatever.
Exactly. Okay. So this is really about how you help people.
How you help people. Okay.
And definitely have keywords in there because that's one of the main spaces where keywords get picked up. Okay,
so keywords for people, again, I'm really sorry to kind of simplify, but for people, like keywords are basically words that either an algorithm or a search engine optimization on the LinkedIn platform will find. So let's say you want to be in the space of accounting, then you should have the word accounting in that sentence somewhere so that people can pick it up.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Exactly.
And how do you separate the keywords? You put a comma? Do you put a...
So I use sort of like these, I don't even know what they're called.
It's the bar, isn't it?
Yeah,
I use the same. Yeah.
The bar, or
the
you can
vertical
have the dots,
bar. What it was called.
the like middle dot. I don't know what that's called either. I always Google middle dot.
Yeah.
So one or the other to kind of break that up. If you have titles are good for someone that has a portfolio career. So for example, I do lots of different things. That helps me. I can't describe in one sentence
what I do.
Everything that I do.
Because you talk, you help.
Exactly.
Yeah, cool.
And then the next part is your summary. So everyone, well, not everyone, but most people either have it empty or it's absolute shit.
Summary is the bio, right? It's that top bit that says, and so here's a question for you. Here's a real question for you, because I've seen both. Would you recommend people writing as like, hey, welcome to my LinkedIn page? Or would you say, Alexandra Galviz is an expert LinkedIn founder? No. Like
unless you're the queen.
Yeah.
First person.
Okay.
I hate it.
Yeah.
And it just creates so much distance with your reader. It's just not approachable whatsoever. Like what you're trying to do is create less distance between you and your reader.
Yeah.
And this is an opportunity where lots of people tend to just dump keywords in or like basically say what they do, like like experience wise that's going to come up anyway
it's going to be
later.
anyway in the bottom. Yeah.
And this is like where you sell yourself. Like
Okay.
this is where people get to know you. And for me, it's with my style of coaching, I very much work with people on how to share their career story. So this is very much less about how, like, sure, there's a paragraph and an element of how they help people, but the majority is around their story, because the more that they can share, the more, again,
People can
relatable and connection that can be made, and trust can start to be built with the reader.
That makes sense. So just to sum up it again, so people focus on the top tier of your website, your shop window, and then pay attention to your summary, and then they go into the whole descriptions and all that kind of stuff.
And in the first 2 sentences of your summary, you absolutely have to have a hook.
Grab attention.
Because if not, people don't, again, click see more.
Yeah. Oh, yes, that's right. Right, because you've got to click see more, right, to see the rest. That's cool. So a question I know people are going to be asking themselves listening to this. They go, okay, we talked a lot about career, right? We talked a lot about people want to change jobs or career. Entrepreneurs, business, thought leaders, people who want to become experts, coaches, speakers, all that kind of field. LinkedIn, still relevant?
Totally, 100%. And I will only say that if their clients are on LinkedIn.
Got it.
So if someone comes to me and says, well, I once had someone come for me from Israel, and she said in our over there, basically people mainly use Facebook, like even in business context, it's Facebook. She was like, very rarely do people use LinkedIn.
Okay.
And then I asked around, and a lot of people were saying the same thing, and I was like, look, if that's the case,
then go
find yourself a Facebook expert to work with, because that's not my territory. And I always say, if you're going to like put all your effort into one or two platforms, your primary one has to be where your audience is, where your primary audience is.
That makes so much sense.
And that's why I'm mainly on LinkedIn. Yeah. And now that I've kind of built that audience, starting to look at a second platform.
Which one are you looking at?
I'm teetering between Instagram and YouTube. Okay. It will most likely be Instagram.
Interesting. Yeah, I think both could be interesting platforms for sure. Okay, we're coming towards the end of the two. We didn't even talk about, like, you won some awards. Didn't you win like some stuff about like LinkedIn Voice of the Year?
LinkedIn Top Voice.
There you go, LinkedIn Top Voice. Yeah, that was cool. That recognition, and we didn't even get to talk about LinkedIn Local, which was something that you were involved with. That, but there's lots of interviews out there where you talk a lot about that. Yeah. So a lot of my interviews, I try and dig some stuff that I haven't really found. So anybody wants to go and check out your stories. Are you still involved in LinkedIn Local, or you kind of moved away from that?
Moved away from that. Cool. Yeah.
All right. So first of all, before we kind of wrap up, I just want to say, thanks again for coming. Apologies the first time we had a mishap. There was no show. It was like, I was like, in the first time in 120 episodes, this has never happened, and I took responsibility for it. And I'm glad you showed up. I was scared this morning. I'm not going to lie. It was like 22. I was like, where's Alex? It's like, I checked my email in case there was like, where's the location or something? So thanks for coming, even if you felt, unwell. And I think it's really cool that you're a voice in a platform that needs to have more heart. And I feel like you're bringing that with your clients. You're bringing that as a message. You're trying to get people to connect more. And LinkedIn can be a beautiful platform. You made me want to get more on LinkedIn. You made me like, okay, I should be posting more on LinkedIn. So your job is done. A few last questions. One of them is, what's one thing that most people don't know about you?
That I speak languages.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what, and everyone always is like, why don't you do anything with it? But I speak French, Spanish, and Italian fluently.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
How do you speak Spanish and Italian?
I'm half Colombian.
Okay.
I spent a lot of time in France.
Yeah.
I even studied in France quite a few times, and I used to spend a lot of summers in Italy.
Okay.
So I just kind of picked them up when I was younger.
Very cool. What does being unconventional mean to you?
Doing things a different way, like forging your own path.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, cool, that's the way society is telling us to do things. Do it another way.
I love it. Last question. You're on, I was going to say Times Square. This is how my brain's Piccadilly Circus. And you've got the massive digital boards outside. And you can write a message. It's a short message, but you can write a message. And you know that everyone's going to walk by. It's going to see that message and read it. What would you want that message to be?
Just be you.
That's right.
Yep.
Little swoosh Nike under there. Change that. Alex, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been a genuine pleasure. And I look forward to our paths crossing again in many more ways, whether that's on other interviews or on platforms. So thanks again for coming.
Thanks for having me.
All right, folks, I hope you enjoyed today's conversation as much as I did. I think it was a really refreshing approach on LinkedIn. You know, when I was thinking about getting Alex on the show, I thought this is really needed because I think more people need to fall in love with LinkedIn and can actually use LinkedIn as a platform to get your message out there. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe over on YouTube, share it with a friend. It's the best form of compliment you can give to the show. And if you're listening to this over on iTunes, you know what to do. Go on Apple, leave a rating and review and all that shebang. We've got some amazing guests lined up. I mean, this is season 14, ladies and gentlemen. This is crazy. So got lots of guests. Keep tuned, stay tuned. Now, this is time for me to wrap this up. Thank you so much for watching. I love you. And as always, as Alex just said, forge your own path. I'll see you next time. Today's episode is brought to you by Vivo Life. Now, we all know the critical importance of protein to sustain a healthy diet. And I'd love to sit here and tell you that we should all get that from whole foods. But the truth is, you know, like me, you might be living a busy lifestyle. And I'm often running from meeting to meeting. And I was looking for the perfect protein powder that could help me sustain my energy throughout the day and also recover after my workouts. Problem is, most proteins out there are filled with sweeteners, artificial flavoring and ingredients. And because they're made from mostly dairy products, tend to not really agree with my digestive system. So that's why in 2014, I started exploring and experimenting with plant-based proteins. But the truth is, back then, the taste, the texture, the smell was just a little nasty. And so I just put up with it because I was looking for a plant-based protein that was good for your health, backed by science, and didn't do too much harm to the planet. But in 2017, something changed. I actually came across Vivo Life. Vivo Life make 100% natural health supplement and products that deliver straight to your door via carbon neutral delivery. Now, let me tell you, I was blown away. Not only did the protein taste great, it also looked amazing, it mixed well, but beyond that, it was by far the healthiest protein on the market that I could find. The reason being is that in every serving you get 25 grams of plant-based protein, and it's not just any protein, it's fermented protein, which is amazing for digestion. On top of that, you get 6 grams of branched-chain amino acids in each serving, and you also get some turmeric extract, which is phenomenal for anti-inflammatory properties, which helps me speed up my recovery. Now, what I usually do after a workout is I'll use some Madagascar vanilla or the salted maca caramel. Those are my two favorite flavors. I'll throw in a banana, maybe some dark leafy greens, some almond milk, some water, maybe some flax seeds, shake it all up, and it tastes amazing. So if you're looking for a healthy, natural, plant-based protein that's gonna get you results, tastes amazing, and does good for the planet, then head over to vivolife.co.uk and use the discount code MARK when you check out to get 10% off your first order. And remember, every purchase you make using the discount code helps support the Unconventionalists podcast. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you for keeping the lights on in the studio.